The meteoric rise of Ipswich Town under Kieran McKenna took its biggest setback yet last year. They were relegated from the Premier League, only winning 4 games and only accumulating 22 points. But they're back, they're in the Championship, and in this video we're going to delve into their critical Premier League learning curve, their squad, built for a Championship renaissance, the evolution of Kieran McKenna's tactics, and the real reason Azor Matusiwa has joined the club. But first, a brief look at the story so far. Their last appearance in the Championship was nothing short than remarkable. In their first season back in England's second tier, they racked up 96 points, won 28 games, and of course, subsequently achieved back-to-back promotions to England's top flight. However, their first Premier League campaign in 22 years didn't quite continue the fairy tale journey. On the 26th of April, following a 3-0 defeat to Newcastle United, Ipswich were officially relegated with 4 games to play. From fine margins falling in the wrong direction to narrow defeats in crucial moments of the season, it was tough. But there were certainly enough reasons to suggest good times wouldn't be coming to an end just yet at Portman Road anytime soon. And that pretty much brings us up to present day. Now, on face value, last season looks like a classic case of a team promoted to the big time simply failing to adjust to the brutal demands that come hand in hand with Premier League football. And although there probably are some truths within that statement, there were plenty of significant takeaways, lessons that I think will play a big part in the comeback story of the Tractor Boys this season. Let's cast our minds back to the Christmas period. It was clear that Kieran McKenna saw the need to adjust their approach in the Premier League. The expansive side of Ipswich needed to take a minor sacrifice in order to become harder to beat. In fact, Kieran McKenna said it himself. If we had a choice, we'd always rather compete in a positive way. But we've also got to be very pragmatic at times this year whenever we feel we need to be. It certainly wasn't a case of abandoning that dynamic style that Ipswich were so brilliant at in League One and the Championship, but instead more about understanding the heavy difference in quality was going to require a more hard-headed approach, if you like. Before we delve into the details behind that shift in approach, the results almost speak for themselves. Between the 2nd of November and the 30th of December, Ipswich conceded 13 goals. That period included a 2-0 win at Tottenham, a 2-0 win over Chelsea, a 1-1 draw against Manchester United, and a narrow 1-0 defeat at the Emirates against Arsenal. Now, we'll come back to those games in a moment and really understand what the change in approach looked like, but for context, over a span of matches 1 game shorter than that run, Ipswich conceded 20 goals. During that period, they conceded 4 against Brentford, 4 against West Ham, and a combined 6 against Liverpool and Manchester City. There's a big difference there and a clear focus on becoming a lot more pragmatic. These screenshots are from Ipswich against Brentford in October. The game finished 4-3 in Brentford's favour, and for me, felt like one of the most defining games for Ipswich last season. Before we take a closer look at one of these screenshots specifically, the problems that Ipswich were facing defensively were very clear. The large gaps between themselves and the Brentford players in this screenshot are beyond concerning, and when we know which players eventually get on the end of these opportunities, it's not really difficult to understand how. This second screenshot is seconds before Ruiz converts his second and Brentford's equaliser just before half-time, bearing in mind Ipswich had a 2-goal cushion just minutes before this. Brentford have played out of the initial press, the midfield has been bypassed comfortably in transition, and suddenly Ipswich are in a whole lot of bother that they only faced on a handful of occasions in the Championship a year prior. The back four isn't visible, with Cameron Burgess out of position, Leif Davis nowhere to be seen, but of course the gap between Harry Clarke and Dara O'Shea is also a glaring issue too. The expansive side of Ipswich were caught out, and Ruiz in transition had a free run into the box. However, only 3 games later at Tottenham, defensively things were already improving. These are screenshots from their 2-1 win over Spurs, and straight away the low block is on display, and there are far more bodies comfortable in and around the box. Dominic Solanke is obviously the target inside the box, but notice how tight the Ipswich players are to him. If you compare that to the level of marking that we saw against Brentford with Ruiz, well, it's totally unrecognisable. From 2 players behind the ball earlier to now 9 in this screenshot, Ipswich have clearly started to adapt, and obviously the scoreline doesn't lie either. They reaped the rewards. Some more numbers reinforce that point too. Let's compare their 4-1 defeat to West Ham to that 2-1 win at Tottenham, because it's not just the result that suggests McKenna has already started to evolve his approach. Against West Ham, Ipswich conceded an open play XG of 3.69, whereas against Tottenham, the metric reduced heavily to just 1.18. If you don't like XG, I totally get it, but the truth remains when it comes to shots and shots on target against as well. At West Ham, McKenna's side conceded 23 shots, with 19 of those being on target. In comparison, Tottenham only registered 5 shots on target and only took 6 shots from inside the Ipswich box. In fact, during that 10-game period we spoke about earlier, Ipswich accumulated 50% of their total points in the Premier League last season. With only 3 games in between those examples, Kieran McKenna's swift tactical awareness evidently paid off. I think served them some priceless lessons as they return to a very different Championship season ahead. Now, obviously, by operating more pragmatically and looking better in a low block, the attacking zones were inevitably going to take a hit. Kieran McKenna said this: "We've tried to keep our most positive elements, but we've been nowhere near as attacking or as open or as dominant in our play as we have been in the last 2 divisions." In the Premier League last season, Ipswich finished with the 3rd lowest expected goals, 3rd least number of big chances created, and the least number of touches inside the opposition box. That's not the Ipswich we were used to. Their 1-0 defeat to Arsenal in December emphasises this point significantly. Ipswich limited the Gunners to an open play XG of 1.43, which is a remarkably low metric when you're playing Arsenal away from home, only conceding 5 shots on target. The concern for Ipswich was their output. Although their defensive principles were improving, they accumulated an attacking XG of 0.15, failed to register a shot on target, and didn't have 1 shot inside Arsenal's box. Of course, it all comes down to balance, and that is kind of the buzzword we're going to be using throughout a lot of this video. And it's something that Ipswich should theoretically find a lot easier this season in the Championship. From a learning standpoint, these gruelling experiences were priceless and certainly added another string to their bow. Let's take a look at the Ipswich squad, because honestly, I think it's a squad built for the Championship. That's not a cliche. I genuinely think that is probably intentional. So much so that 11 of the 12 players that they recruited following their promotion to the Premier League had very recently played in the Championship. Examples include Sami Szomdics at Blackburn, Jack Clarke at Sunderland, Jacob Greaves at Hull City, of course, as well Omari Hutchinson with themselves when he was on loan from Chelsea. By no means am I saying they planned to be relegated, but it did mean if they were demoted, they had a great blend of young, hungry players who have just experienced the Premier League and were well suited to life in the division below. And the numbers, well, they speak for themselves once again. Last time Szomdics was in the Championship, he registered 31 goal involvements. Conor Chaplin racked up 21, Jack Clarke 19, Omari Hutchinson 16, Jaden Fidegin 18, and George Hurst 13. That's a total of 118 goal involvements. Remember, when Ipswich were promoted from the Championship, they scored a remarkable 92 goals, the most in the division that year. It's so common when a team gets relegated from the Premier League, they're totally stripped of their most effective players, especially those ones that have been able to show their quality in the best league in the world. They might have already lost Liam Delap and could still lose Omari Hutchinson, but it can't be doubted they're returning to the Championship with one hell of a proven attacking group. This season's Championship will be very different to the one that Ipswich were in during the 23-24 season. With more teams adopting a slightly less possession-based approach, McKenna's side will need to be ready to face a whole new set of obstacles this time around, notably their ability to find solutions to teams operating with a compact, often low-block setup. But as we mentioned earlier, they only made that exact transition themselves last season. It comes down to the buzzword, once again, balance. What have they learned from adapting to the Premier League, not just in how they play, but in handling teams now using the same tactics against them? With that in mind, let's take a look at the most common method of being effective when faced with a low block, and importantly, the profiles Ipswich currently have in potentially putting those things into practice. The use of the wide areas. It's common knowledge that by stretching a defence horizontally, wide players can then create space in the middle of the pitch and force defenders into uncomfortable situations, or as Johan Cruyff labelled it, strong to weak. It's the approach where a team looks to overload on one side of the pitch and accelerate on the other. It's used to force imbalances in the opposition's shape and create spaces that would allow teams to penetrate into dangerous areas. This all comes down to tempo and the speed that the ball is played. We know Ipswich aren't shy of playing the ball quickly in the Championship. They registered 66 direct attacks and averaged 19 accurate long balls per 90 last time they played at this level. In that sense, it's nothing we haven't really seen before under Kieran McKenna. Nobody could really understand what their Championship style was other than remarkably dynamic and extremely effective. Whether it's by fullbacks staying high and wide, helping to stretch the opposition back line, or wide players drifting into half spaces to create or carry from exploited zones, there's no shortage of options, and in fact this squad has never been more suited to this kind of approach. Let me show you how. Take Leif Davis, for example. His personal heat map from last season in the Premier League compared to the one in the Championship a year before obviously does look different, but we know how much he enjoys playing high and wide, staying tight to the touchline and causing dangerous left side overloads. He's a perfect option to overcome this potential obstacle. During the 23-24 season, he created the most chances for a fullback in the division, successfully completed the most number of crosses, and finished the season with a remarkable 20 goal involvements. That's what you call a dynamic threat in the wide areas. And it's exactly the same with Jack Clarke and Jayden Philogene, two natural ball carriers, 1v1 threats, but importantly, risk takers too. And being able to take risks is also a very, very important asset when you're trying to break down these strong, robust defensive units. Jack Clarke's last appearance in the Championship saw him register the most successful dribbles and a dribble success rate of 59.7%. His output from those positions wasn't bad either. He created 91 chances and finished the season with 19 goal involvements. I think he's going to thrive this year. The different ranges of player profiles in the Championship will be game-changing for Kieran McKenna. I truly believe that this season, and it'll allow Ipswich to become even more flexible and adapt to the variety of questions they'll be faced with. Now, we've touched on both ends of the pitch heavily, but we haven't yet discussed the middle of the pitch, probably the area that Ipswich need the most work this summer, and already are getting a bit of a revamp in. With Sam Morsy creeping to the end of his career, Calvin Phillips returning to Manchester City, and Jens Kajiste's next move up in the air, it's not surprising the imminent arrivals of Azor, Matusiwa and Marcel Ruiz look like pretty popular ones. We've seen so many teams in the Championship this year love recruiting these physical athletic profiles. We did a video on Birmingham recently and it was the same with them too. There seems to be plenty of focus on filling those key positions with players that are physically strong, but importantly mobile too. And I can tell you, Matusiwa is certainly one of those physical profiles. He has numerous similarities to Sam Morsy, and whether this is a direct replacement for the Egyptian now or the future, I think he's going to slot into this new look Ipswich midfield with brilliant effect. Before we touch on the exceptional destroying capabilities in just a moment, I think it's important we highlight all angles of Matusiwa's game. His season heat map from Ligue 1 last season shows him operating not just in his own half, but also the opposition half too. The idea that the Dutchman is simply a ball-winning central midfielder is simply a lazy misconception. He might be comfortable in his tackling and an out-of-possession monster, but he's also a progressor of the ball too. Last season, he registered 3.16 progressive carries per 90 in the French top flight, 17 successful dribbles, accumulating a dribble success rate of 81%. As well as a ball carrier, he's also a progressive passer too. Last season, he averaged 5.8 progressive passes per 90 and a success rate of progressive passes per 90 of 87.1%. Defensively, yep, the numbers are brilliant. He breaks up play for fun. Last season, he won 2.2 tackles per 90, won 6.11 duels per 90, and recovered the ball on average 4.6 times per 90 as well. By having Matusiwa able to contribute both defensively and progressively, this theoretically means it will increase the chances of Ipswich being more effective attacking low blocks this season. They're no longer the underdogs. By having just defensive midfielders in the centre of the pitch, it can very often lead to predictable patterns when it comes to passing, a lack of creativity and penetration in the attacking zones of the pitch. The addition, as all-round midfielders go, it just does make sense. As for Marcel Ruiz, well, this one looks slightly less imminent, but regardless, a really smart pickup. We know Kieran McKenna normally operates with two slightly destructive central midfielders in a double pivot, so the potential combination of Marcel Ruiz and Matusiwa does fit the bill very, very nicely. Similar to Matusiwa though, Ruiz isn't just a traditional number 6. He touched the ball 1,195 times in the Mexican top flight, registered 1.76 progressive carries per 90, and finished the campaign with an average of 6.15 progressive passes per 90 as well. When it comes to breaking up play, he can certainly do that. He made 27 tackles, won 97 duels, and recovered the ball on 2.2 occasions per 90 last season. The return to the Premier League might not have continued Kieran McKenna's Ipswich fairy tale, but I firmly do believe, as I hope I've expressed in detail in this video, it was anything but a wasted experience. They adapted, the squad certainly matured, and now, with a squad almost tailor-made for the Championship from top to bottom, they return with a big point to prove. Of course, as we mentioned, Ipswich will then need to learn from those lessons, and if they do, you heard it here first, they'll be ready to rewrite the script again.